What's going on there, folks? It is the Earthmaster here on this beautiful Saturday, September 17th, 2022. Still morning time out here, just before noon, about 11:15 a.m. California time. Latest quake on the globe shows a 0.9, just under 1.0 there in Southern California. We have seen some pretty large uptick in earthquake activity earlier this morning time frame, where Taiwan's seen a pretty large earthquake. Go ahead and check it out here on the latest map here from the USGS, showing that movement here just on the western bend here, the western edge of the Philippine Plate. Pretty shallow earthquake activity too. A 6.5 coming in a few hours ago, about four hours ago or so. Since then, we've seen quite a bit of aftershock activity. This is only showing 4.0 and above for the international community from the USGS. So I'm sure there's quite a few more earthquakes occurring in this area from the EMSC model, which we'll check here in a little bit. But either way, definitely some pretty good uptick in movement. Yesterday was one of those weird days. We were kind of waiting for some activity to kick up, and we were kind of watching these quiet zones. I was kind of pointing out possibly somewhere between Solomon Islands, Mariana Trench, or the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. But if you look here, this area of Taiwan really hasn't seen that much earthquake activity either. So it could be considered a quiet zone prior to this movement this morning. But they did have a 4.9, looks like a couple days ago. So, but Taiwan's been very active far as general activity goes. But then again, this region does see quite a bit of slip rate accumulated in a short amount of time. Historical data, let's go ahead and check this out, show you guys how much activity kicks up here historically. And this is since about 1900 or so. Let's bring up the key. 1900 to 2015. That's a lot of earthquake activity, right? Quite a bit. And that kind of explains the slip rates that occurs out there. It's pretty high amongst the western portion of the Philippine Plate here. A lot on both sides. We got a couple different subduction zones here on both sides of the Philippine Plate. So it's a very dynamic area in terms of plate tectonics. And I think it's one of the more areas that see quite a bit of earthquake activity. So not surprising to see some movement there. Far as the rest of the Pacific Plate goes, we did have some activity kind of back building here prior to all this movement this morning. A 4.6, 27 kilometers deep. Also seen a 4.3 at 417 kilometers deep. So some deeper movement and some shallow activity kind of pushing and squeezing this plate westward. The latest quake here shows a 4.4 in the Japan area northeast of Taiwan here, kind of out towards the China Sea. So there's still quite a bit of pressure here at play within this region. We'll have to watch that zone pretty closely. Down here into the Indonesia area, seen some movement coming up earlier this morning time frame and overnight. In fact, I believe that activity was prior to all the movement there in Taiwan. Let's see what we got here. Even over here around the Vanuatu area, we've seen some movement overnight, again, prior to the movement in Taiwan this morning. So a lot of activity kicking up, including a deep 4.4 at 587 kilometers deep there into the Tonga Trench region. A lot of activity kicking up and allowing this, basically the most built-up area to cause an earthquake up here. And, we really can't. A lot of people talk about forecasting, and it's kind of odd. I'm getting into my my lecture here. I believe it's coming up this week about earthquake forecasting and the possibilities around it. They teach it in all the major colleges and also community colleges as well. So I'm getting into that this coming week. So I'm going to look into that. I've always been one to not think that you can forecast an earthquake. You can look at these quiet zones. You can look at slip rate, GPS measurements, how much strain has been built up over the years, and kind of put out a percentage forecast. But jump on the stream this morning and say, yeah, there's going to be an earthquake up here in this Lucian Trench area, 6.0. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball, so we really can't say that. No one's 100% accurate out here. A couple YouTubers claim to be that, but they're not. Of course, if you say that there's going to be an earthquake in California, eventually there will be an earthquake out in California. But I tend to look and monitor quiet zones in areas that haven't seen a lot of earthquake activity. It's obviously building up pressure and steam, so to speak, in the area of the quietness, and then go from there. But to say that an earthquake's going to pop off right here, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to that lecture on the earthquake forecasting to see what all is said about it. And then I'll probably pass some info along here, because this is what they teach, the folks there that are going to college and whatnot. And I'm in one geography class, which covers geology and a bunch of other stuff in there. There's like 5 or 6 different areas of topics in that geography class. So anyway, I'll look forward to that this coming week, and pass any info along that I find interesting there. Chile did see some uptick overnight as well. Looks like a couple earthquakes down into the Peru-Chile Trench. One of those 120 kilometers deep, 180 for one as well, near the Chile-Bolivia area, underneath this region. Oh man, my birds are going crazy. Forgot to turn off their light, so they're in there squawking like crazy. Puerto Rico Trench, seen some activity as well. But I believe the majority of this, let's go back here to the 1 day 2.5 and above map. The majority of this activity looks like the majority of it was prior to the 6.5, and I'm talking about the Indonesia area, the Fiji Islands area, all the uptick there in the South America region. Now remember last night when this earthquake struck, right? This is another way to possibly look at areas of interest that could have uptick in earthquake activity. Not forecasting, but I did say when we have this divergent boundary up here, separation of the seafloor, this kind of moves this plate here, the Nazca plate, into the Peru-Chile Trench, in which we've seen an uptick in earthquake activity following that earthquake there along the divergent boundary. So it's just not forecasting, but it's areas to watch for. And for example, this area, the subduction zone itself, the Kermadec Trench and Tonga Trench, a lot of times when we see deeper movement down here, it's very mindful to watch this area up at the surface to see subsequent shallower earthquake activity. That's how it works. That's the dynamics of the plate tectonics. It's not forecasting in any way, but it's expected to see an uptick in movement here when we have a let's see if I can spit it out here. When we have movement along the divergent boundaries here, the separation kind of spreads over here a little bit, pushes this plate here, the Nazca plate eastward, and the Pacific plate as a general more westward and northwestward. So this is just a little mindful event there following that activity last night. All right, let's see what do we got here for the West Coast areas. Zooming in here, looks like some movement off onto the Cascadia subduction zone once again. Got a 2.1 off the coast of Oregon at about 19 kilometers. Now the Cascadia megathrust sits just offshore, folks. 322 years since that's kicked up the big one. We've covered this area a numerous amount of times in the past in many videos, and no one knows exactly when this is going to go. All I know is 322 years. There's a lot of built-up strain. The intervals of earthquakes here for the full rupture ranges from. There's a couple different guesses that they claim from 200 to 500 years. Some say 300 to 500 years. But we also have to account for the potential of seeing a partial rupture, which hasn't happened prior to the 1700 earthquake, the last big one, which was a 9-pointer along the Cascadia. So I still think there's a good possibility of seeing a partial rupture of the Cascadia here soon, just because of past Tremors, a large concentration of tremor amount here along the southern end of the Cascadia. Numerous swarms that we've seen off the Pacific Ocean over the past few months. Remember the Blanco fracture zone and areas down here in northern Cal. Just a lot of strain, but we don't know for certain though. But we look for little clues that could give us a little indicator of maybe what could be coming. No crystal ball, no magic earthquake forecasting, crystal ball. It's we don't have that. No one does. And I've seen a lot of comments there saying that there's people that can forecast this. Well, that's not forecasting. You look at areas of seismic increase, a lot of swarms, or a lack of activity in a high slip rate area, and then you can maybe make a percentage. But forecasting and magic ball forecasting just doesn't work. What do we got? A little bit of activity out around the Antelope Valley area yesterday. This was in not Southern California, but over here around the Nevada border. There we go. Spit it out. Although most of this activity here from overnight time frame. The Bay Area, one earthquake off the San Andreas Fault near Pacifica, a little 1.2. Some scattered activity kind of kicking up down here in Southern California as well, and also the Ridgecrest region. No major swarms to take note of, no major unusual activity throughout the Yellowstone area. Let's go ahead and check this out here real quick. We'll key up the Yellowstone movement. And they had a little bit of swarming activity kicking up. And it's funny because this was prior to the 7-pointer that struck, or the 6.5 that struck there in Taiwan. Now the 6.5 signature, let me see exactly where that's at. Sometimes it doesn't even show up on here. And I find that really weird because we've seen 6-pointers before show up. So let's get the exact time frame here when that 6.5 struck there in Taiwan. UTC time is what we use, 1341 UTC time. So 1341 looks like it's going to, there's some of the S waves, I can barely see them, little wavy lines. 1341 looks as though maybe right here. Just barely visible though. That's kind of a little on the odd side. Okay, but anyway, as far as normal earthquake activity, yes, there was some movement prior to that the 1341 UTC time, which was the 6.5. Notice that there's some earthquake activity popping up here in Yellowstone. Just mostly microquakes, but it was showing up across the park here, northwest corner of the park. Since then, it's died off, and that's kind of our thing, right? Talk about that teeter-totter effect and relief here for the West Coast, the eastern portion of the Pacific Plate. A lot of times when we see movement here, about 90% of the time when we see movement on the western portion, oh man, these birds are driving me crazy. Along the Pacific Plate here, next time I'll turn their lights off. We see that activity really kick up here to the west, and then it drops off here along the eastern portion of the Pacific Plate. And that's kind of what happens here. A lot of times we'll see swarming inland, or a lot of earthquake activity in the North American Plate well inland. And then we'll see subsequent large-scale activity, and then a drop-off of movement here as far as earthquake activity goes amongst the West Coast, the Cocos Plate, the Nazca Plate, South America. All these areas drop off big time when we see that movement over here on the western portion of the Pacific Plate and adjacent plates here. In this case, going to be the Philippine Plate, the western edge there, showing that 6.5 this morning. Like I say, 90% of the time it does that, and then about 10% of the time, both of these are going crazy. So, just a little note there to watch, considering Yellowstone activity dropped off just about the time that 6.5 kicked up there in Taiwan. All right, moving on. Check out the rest of the country here. By the way, USGS not showing anything up here for earthquake activity in Yellowstone, just there on the seismographs. Oklahoma, Texas, all pretty quiet. Only a couple small earthquakes. We had one earthquake out here in New York. a 1.9 earthquake kicking off, looks like earlier this morning prior to that 6.5 in Taiwan. Now let's see what we got for seismic hazard in this area. It is within that zone, so to speak. There's some seismic activity, which stretches more prominently up north into portions of the Ottawa area, Montreal, where there's a couple different fault systems that run through here. But that little 1.9 near in New York, definitely not abnormal, because it does sit within that range of some seismic fault zones out there. Get back off of that map. There we go. So let's see what else we got. Nothing going on in the Atlantic. We did have some earthquake activity well off the coast of South Africa. Notice they have a 5.2 South Africa. Well, it doesn't say how far, but I guess 1,000, maybe 1,500 miles or so. In this case, I would have put down 5.2 Southwest Indian Ridge, or west of the Southwest Indian Ridge, which sits here. But to put a 5.2 South Africa, one would think, wow, I didn't feel that earthquake in South Africa. But it's only 1,000 or so miles away. More than that, I think. All right, 4.9 out into the Indian Ocean, mid-Indian Ridge. Again, these are divergent boundaries. It looks like, let's see here. It looks like that activity in the divergent boundaries was prior to the 6.9. Yep, or 6.5, excuse me. Keep wanting to say 6.9. What's coming on? What's going on? Maybe I do have that magic crystal earthquake ball in my head. I'm forecasting a 6.9. No, I'm not. Eventually, there'll be a 6.9 somewhere, right? If I say it enough, it's going to be a 6.9 here, folks. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Tremor map last night was pretty uneventful. We did have 108 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia subduction zone. That's the mega thrust area for the folks in the Pacific Northwest, and well, anyone that lives around the Pacific Ocean will no doubt experience a large tsunami once this thing goes. Not for sure when, though, folks. I still think it has to do a lot with tremor activity, the amount of tremor activity that's been kicked up, and those, definitely been saving all this data, and that's what these folks have been doing too at the PNSN network. They look at these tremor counts and these little patterns or cycles that the Cascadia goes through. And over the past year and a half, 2 years, these intervals of swarms are getting stronger and much closer together. Before, it used to come like maybe in a yearly fashion, that 13, 14-month time frame. But if you look about 2020 or so, these little lines that were spread apart are now closer and closer together. So I'd like to look at little signs like that in the irregular patterns, and maybe use that as a sign of what we could look for pending a megathrust earthquake here on the Cascadia. But for now, just continuing to do its thing with a couple small earthquakes there, Northern California this morning, and one off the coast of Oregon there into the Cascadia megathrust. Which is not a sign that it's going to pop, but when it does, I don't think we're going to see swarms or precursors in the Cascadia. It just does it, pops with the 9.1, and then that's it. At least a 9.1, right? Could be greater. Let's see what else we got here, folks. Check out solar weather activity today. I'm kind of excited. I feel in a good mood today, and the reason why, because I actually got a little bit of sleep last night. I've been having some issues sleeping, but I got some decent sleep. And plus, we got some rain coming in. That always boosts up my mood. I'm a weather guy, so I like to have rain. And weather, boring sunshine, you can have it. Move out to California. You'll love it. But I look forward to the rain. And we got lots of it coming up here. Maybe over an inch of rain coming up Sunday and Monday for this area along the West Coast. I'm ready. Bring it on. Solar weather activity. We had a couple M flares yesterday, of course, and it looks like we had another somewhat moderate M flare up around the M1.9 level. It looks like it was somewhat of a longer duration, possibly produced a CME. Not for certain which one that came from. Let's see what we got here. I'm guessing it was from the far side sunspot 3098, which is now out of view. And any subsequent CME that was produced was not directed, Earth directed. When was this put out? That was yeah, that was from yesterday. They haven't done anything yet as far as the updates go here on the solarham.net site. Looking at the current magnetic fields here of the sunspots, 3098 again is way off here. This is not 3098. That's a separate sunspot. That's way gone now. So it's not going to have any effect here on Earth. The sunspots that we have to deal with is old region 3088, which is still kind of looking awesome and kind of just hanging out there. It may be able to produce a C flare or so. We'll watch that. It's now newly named sunspot 3102. And again, these other ones don't really pose too much of a hazard. Behind that, though, there's not a whole lot of growth or any type of sunspot activity. We do have a coronal hole that's going to be lining up bullseye facing the Earth here pretty soon. See that in the center disk here of the sun. Kind of lengthy as well, covering both the north and the south equator part of the sun here. That's going to be aiming up here for Earth, and that will enhance the 3-day geomagnetic forecast in the coming days ahead, probably after the 19th time frame or so. So we've got a little shot of seeing the auroras at the higher latitudes. We'll definitely watch for that. But that's about it, folks. So I'm going to get out of here and see if I can't enjoy the day here and wait for the rain to come in late tonight. And I got to make sure I got everything all covered outside. It's been a while since we've had rain here in California, so got to make sure the lawnmower is out of the rain and all that good stuff. No electrical outlets out there exposed. All right, guys, we'll catch you a little bit later on tonight with the complete update video, unless something major happens, which unfortunately I don't have that magic crystal ball in front of me. Take care, folks. We'll catch you a little bit later. Peace out.